Now, if I'm using Apoxie Sculpt or Thinset for a job, I generally mix up more than what I need because I don't want to get close to the end of the job and run out. Now, rather than throw out that excess Apoxie Sculpt or Thinset, I like to put it into good use. And what I tend to do is I tend to put the excess into molds. Now, these are some molds here I bought from the US, and I've had them for around about 4 or 5 years, and I can't remember the name of the company where I bought them from. But there are lots of molds out in the marketplace, especially these days, because some people also use molds for polymer clay. But I like to use the molds using Apoxie Sculpt because that makes the pieces also outdoor durable, and also you can use it for inside. Now, if I'm using Thinset, and for those people in Australia, Thinset is American terminology for cement-based adhesive. So if you're out here in Australia and you're looking to buy some, ask for cement-based adhesive, not Thinset. Now, if I'm using Thinset, I like to use silicone molds because it releases quite easily from those. But in the case of these, I do need to have a release powder so that if I'm putting Apoxie Sculpt in it, I can release it out of the mold quite easily. So I'm going to clear this area, and then what we'll do is we will have a look at using the leftover Apoxie Sculpt first, and then we'll also then have a look at using Thinset. I've chosen this lovely mold here, and it's got a lovely heart in it and some really beautiful detail in it, and that's going to look really good, that detail, when you're using Apoxie Sculpt. Now, as a release agent, I'm going to be using Johnson's baby powder, but there are other release agents on the market. This is just the one that I use. And then I've tipped some of that into this container, just a very, very small amount. I'm going to use a dry paintbrush, just put it in there, swirl it around with the Johnson's baby powder, and then I'm just going to now swirl it around into this mold. And I'm really just giving it a dusting. I'm not filling it up, I'm just giving it a dusting. So dusting is all it's needed. If you have too much, just tip it back into the container there. Now I've mixed up some Apoxie Sculpt, and now what I'm going to do is just push it in. Now when you push it in, it can stick to your finger, so make sure that you don't pull it back out again. And we're just putting it in like that, pushing it around, and you're just wanting it kind of fairly level. Pushing firmly but not hard. And then I'm going to get a little dob of it. Just a small dob. I'm going to put it in the center there, or on the edge, and I'm going to lift it out. And then I'm going to turn that over. And then I'm going to flatten. When I say flatten it, I'm only just pushing down on it. I'm not actually flattening the whole detail. I'm only just pushing it down just to get it a bit flat. Now I'm going to leave that, and I can now make another one, and then I'm going to let this set up a little bit, and then I'm going to then just trim off that edge slightly, but I don't want to do it yet. So I'm just going to get another dose of this, put it in here, and always look after your molds because really at the end of the day, they will last you for many, many years. There you go. Again, we're turning that over. We're just going to push this down here. And if you distort the piece a little bit, you can just push it back into shape. But look at that detail in there. It looks really, really good. Okay, we're going to leave those for around about, I would say probably about an hour, depending on the environment that you're working in. But in this particular case, I'm leaving this for about an hour. Then I'm going to come back and just trim up that edge there. See how it's hanging over? I'm going to get there with the knife and just trim that up. Now, I could do it now, but the only thing is I might distort it out of shape. So leaving it for about an hour, even a little bit more than that, will allow it to keep its shape and make it a lot easier for you to trim. Okay, this has been about an hour and a half, and they're now quite firm to handle. And all I'm going to do, I'll put that one aside, and all I'm going to do is cut the excess off. And it's now easier to handle all this, which is really good. Hopefully you can see that on camera. There you go. And it doesn't take long. And then here. There you go. So I've got 2 there. And that one there could actually do with a little bit more, but it'll at least give you an idea. And then you can apply mica powder, you can apply acrylic paint. And the other thing is to, like I said at the very start, these are suitable for outside. So you're not going to have any issue with them. Once they're fully cured, you can put them outside and they are very, very hardy. Now on the screen is a photograph of a mosaic cross that I created several years ago. And in that cross is a heart that I also created using the same process as I've just shown you with Apoxie Sculpt. And then all I did was I just added some mica powders and coloured it. And I think it turned out really beautiful. So using this process, you can create anything you want to use in your mosaic. You're only going to be limited by your imagination. So now what we'll do is we'll look at doing the Thinset. Okay, we're good to go. I've got my silicone mold here. I've got my Thinset, and I've just given that a little bit more of a mix. And all I'm going to do is just put it into the mold. And it's just going to slide in like that. And we're just going to kind of like move it around. Try not to add too much. There you go. And then we'll do some more while we're at it. It's very, very easy to do, but it does use up your extra Thinset rather than throw it out. And the reason why I'm jiggling it around is because I want to make sure that it goes in there and any air bubbles are released. You can also do this as well. You can also flop it like that, just to flatten it out, because this has a little, this like has a little burst or a teardrop in there. So I'm really wanting to make sure that's completely covered and there's no air bubbles around that, because I don't want air bubbles to show. I mean, if they happen to, well, that's okay. It's going to add a bit of texture to the piece as well, and you can always fill it, but if you can get it right in one go, that's all the better. Okay, that looks pretty good. Give that a bit of a thump down, just very lightly. Okay, and we'll see how we go. We'll leave this for 24 hours. I'll come back tomorrow. We'll take them out and see how they look. Well, this is very interesting. It's been 24 hours later, and I notice that on top, which is going to be the bottom, each one of these has cracks in it. I haven't had that happen before. I'm going to take them out and see what they're like. This is going to be very interesting. Well, they have blemishes. They've had some air bubbles in them that didn't escape. But they are very, very strong. It's quite effective, but it's certainly not what I was really after. And each of them has a flaw. That's, where are we? That bit there is part of the mold, so I was expecting that. But these little bubbles here, I wasn't expecting those at all. See how well it releases from the silicone mold though? Very, very easy. I've done it before. It's worked extremely well. I've done it quite a few times and I haven't had any issues. So the only thing I can think of is it's the consistency of the Thinset, because it may not have been runny enough. It could have been just too firm. I'd left it for a while, and hence that's why the bubbles didn't release from them. But anyway, it shows you that you can do it. Certainly you have the Apoxie Sculpt, which worked quite well, and it will work with this too. But obviously, if it's not quite right, then neither of these little cabochon things are going to turn out. So anyway, I hope you've taken something away from this video. I hope it's helped you. If you have any comments, put them down in the bottom of the comments section on the YouTube channel. Perhaps something like this has happened to you before, or perhaps you have a better way of doing it, because this is just the way I do it. But of course, there are many different ways of doing it. And I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy.